Sarah Martinez thought her biggest challenge would be learning the coffee machine preferences of her new colleagues at the downtown law firm. She had no idea that within 72 hours, a military helicopter would circle the building 3 times, demanding to speak with her specifically. The receptionist who answered the call that Tuesday morning nearly dropped the phone when the voice on the other end said, "We need to speak with Sarah Martinez immediately. This is a matter of national security." What they didn't know was that the quiet woman filing documents in the back office had spent the last 15 years living under a carefully constructed identity, and now someone had found her. Sarah Martinez adjusted her reading glasses and stared at the stack of legal documents on her desk. 3 weeks into her new job at Henderson & Associates, she was still getting used to the rhythm of the downtown law office. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the mahogany furniture that gave the place an old-world charm she found comforting. She had chosen this job carefully. Small, firm, quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where people minded their own business. After 15 years of moving from city to city, changing her name, her appearance, her entire life story, Sarah had finally found what felt like a safe haven. The partners, Richard Henderson and Margaret Associates, seemed more interested in their golf schedules than prying into their employees' backgrounds. The law firm specialized in estate planning and real estate transactions. Nothing exciting, nothing that would draw attention. Perfect for someone who needed to disappear into the background of everyday life. Sarah had learned long ago that the best place to hide was in plain sight, doing ordinary work, living an ordinary life. Her colleagues had welcomed her warmly but without excessive curiosity. There was Janet, the office manager in her 60s who brought homemade cookies every Friday. Marcus, the young paralegal fresh out of school who was eager to prove himself. And Beth, the receptionist who knew everyone in the building and served as the unofficial keeper of office gossip. During her first week, Sarah had crafted her cover story carefully. She told them she had moved from Phoenix after her divorce, looking for a fresh start. She had experience in legal administration from her previous job at a small firm there. She was quiet, reliable, and kept to herself. All of this was partially true, which made it easier to remember and more convincing to tell. What they didn't know was that Sarah Martinez wasn't her real name. In fact, she had used so many names over the years that sometimes she had to pause and remember which identity she was supposed to be living. Born Elena Volkov in Moscow 38 years ago, she had been recruited by Russian intelligence while studying computer science at Moscow State University. Her specialty was cyber warfare and digital infiltration, skills that had made her invaluable to her handlers. But that life felt like it belonged to someone else now. Elena Volkov had died on a cold night in Berlin 15 years ago, when she made the decision that would change everything. She had been assigned to infiltrate an American technology company to steal plans for advanced encryption software. Instead, she had fallen in love with an American engineer named David Chen who worked at the company. More importantly, she had discovered that her handlers planned to use the stolen technology not just for espionage, but to launch cyber attacks that would cripple American infrastructure and potentially cost thousands of lives. That night in Berlin, Elena Volkov chose love and conscience over loyalty to her country. She contacted David and told him everything. Together, they went to the CIA station chief in Berlin. In exchange for the intelligence she could provide about Russian cyber operations, she was offered a new life in America under the Witness Protection Program. But witness protection had its limitations. After 5 years of living under constant surveillance and strict rules about where she could go and what she could do, Sarah had made another difficult choice. She left the program, choosing to disappear on her own terms rather than live forever as a ward of the American government. David had wanted to come with her, but she couldn't ask him to give up his career, his family, his entire life. They said goodbye at a small cafe in Portland, and she walked away from the last piece of her old life. Since then, she had become a master of reinvention. She learned to do hair and worked in salons in 3 different states. She taught herself bookkeeping and managed accounts for small businesses. She worked as a waitress, a store clerk, a hotel receptionist. Each job lasted no more than 2 years before she would quietly disappear and recreate herself somewhere new. The law firm felt different, though. Maybe it was because she was getting older and tired of running. Maybe it was because she had saved enough money to be more selective about where she worked. Or maybe it was because she had finally found a place where she could use her intelligence without drawing attention to herself. Legal work required attention to detail, analytical thinking, and discretion, all skills she had in abundance. On this particular Tuesday morning, Sarah was reviewing documents for a real estate closing when she heard Beth's voice carry across the office in an excited whisper. Beth loved drama, and even the smallest piece of unusual news could fuel her imagination for days. Sarah tried to tune out the conversation, but certain words caught her attention. Military, Beth was saying to Janet. I swear that's what the man said on the phone. Asked if we had a Sarah Martinez working here. Sarah's blood ran cold, but she forced herself to keep her eyes on the documents in front of her. She had trained herself never to react visibly to potential threats. Over the years, there had been false alarms, mistaken identities, cases where someone with a similar name was being sought for perfectly innocent reasons. Maybe it's about her ex-husband, Janet suggested. Didn't she say he was in the military? Sarah had never said any such thing, but she didn't correct the assumption. Let them create their own explanations. The important thing was not to panic, not to do anything that would confirm she was anything other than what she appeared to be. But her mind was already racing through possibilities. Had someone finally traced her digital footprints? She was careful about her online presence, but absolute digital anonymity was nearly impossible in the modern world. Had one of her former identities been compromised? Had someone from her past recognized her despite the changes she had made to her appearance over the years? I told him she was in a meeting, Beth continued, clearly enjoying being the center of attention, but he said it was urgent. Something about verification of information for security clearance. I scheduled him to call back at 2 o'clock. Security clearance. Sarah's heart rate increased, but she forced her breathing to remain steady. There were only a few reasons why the military would be asking about security clearance for someone who had never applied for a government job. None of those reasons were good news for someone living under an assumed identity. She glanced at the clock. It was 11:30. She had 2.5 hours to decide what to do. Running was always an option. She had perfected the art of disappearing without trace. Her car was parked 2 blocks away, not in the building's parking garage where it might be watched. She had a go bag hidden in her apartment with cash, identification documents, and everything she needed to become someone else within 24 hours. But running meant giving up the life she had carefully built here. It meant starting over again at 38, finding another job, another city, another identity to maintain. She was tired of running. For the first time in 15 years, she had found a place where she felt like she could stay. Marcus appeared at her desk with a stack of files. Hey, Sarah. Mr. Henderson wants these reviewed before the Morrison closing tomorrow. Think you can get through them by end of day? Of course, she replied, surprised at how normal her voice sounded. No problem at all. As Marcus walked away, Sarah made her decision. She wouldn't run, not yet. She would take the call at 2 o'clock and find out exactly what they wanted. Maybe it really was a case of mistaken identity. Maybe someone else named Sarah Martinez had applied for a security clearance and they were trying to verify information. But even as she tried to convince herself of these innocent explanations, she knew they were unlikely. The name Sarah Martinez was common enough, but combined with her work at a law firm and the specific request for her by name suggested someone knew more about her than she was comfortable with. She spent the next 2 hours working mechanically through the documents, her mind running through scenarios and contingencies. If this was about her past, there were several possibilities. The most dangerous was that her former handlers had found her and wanted her back. The Russians had a long memory and a longer reach. They didn't forgive defection easily. Another possibility was that American intelligence had discovered her unauthorized departure from witness protection and wanted to bring her back into the fold. That would be safer but would mean giving up her freedom once again. The least dangerous scenario was that she had somehow been identified as a person of interest in an ongoing investigation, possibly related to cybercrimes or national security. If she could convince them she was just an ordinary legal secretary, with no connection to whatever they were investigating, she might be able to maintain her current identity. 1:50, Beth called across the office. Sarah, that military guy is going to call in 10 minutes. Should I transfer it to your desk or do you want to take it in Mr. Henderson's office for privacy? My desk is fine, Sarah replied. Thank you. She saved her work and closed the computer file she had been reviewing. Whatever was about to happen, she wanted to be able to leave quickly if necessary. She pulled out a legal pad and pen, ready to take notes that might help her understand what they knew and what they wanted. At exactly 2 o'clock, her phone rang. She picked it up on the second ring. This is Sarah Martinez. Miss Martinez, this is Captain James Wilson with the Navy Criminal Investigative Service. I need to verify some information with you regarding an ongoing investigation. Navy. Not Army, not Air Force, not CIA. Navy. Sarah's mind immediately began processing what this might mean. Her work 15 years ago had occasionally intersected with naval intelligence, particularly regarding cybersecurity for ship systems. But that connection seemed too remote and too old to be relevant now. "I'm not sure I understand," she said carefully. "I don't have any connection to the Navy. Ma'am, we have information suggesting you may have knowledge relevant to a matter of national security. I'd prefer to discuss this in person rather than over the phone. Would it be possible for you to meet with me this afternoon?" The request was polite but firm. Sarah recognized the tone. This wasn't really a request at all. "Can you tell me what this is regarding? I can't imagine how I could be helpful with anything related to national security. Ma'am, I'd rather not discuss the details over an unsecured line. I can meet you at your office or at another location of your choosing. This shouldn't take more than an hour of your time." Sarah glanced around the office. Beth was pretending to work but was clearly listening to every word. Janet had stopped filing and was also paying attention. Meeting at the office would expose her colleagues to whatever this was about, and it would make it impossible for her to leave quickly if necessary. "There's a coffee shop called The Daily Grind about 3 blocks from here," she said. "I could meet you there at 4 o'clock. That works perfectly. I'll be in uniform, and I'll find you. Thank you for your cooperation, Miss Martinez." After he hung up, Sarah sat quietly for a moment, processing the conversation. Captain Wilson had been professional, even respectful. But there had been something in his tone that suggested he knew more about her than he was saying. The comment about an unsecured line was particularly interesting. It suggested he knew or suspected that she had experience with communication security. "Everything okay?" Beth asked, not even pretending that she hadn't been listening. "Yes, just some confusion about someone with a similar name," Sarah replied. "Nothing important." She spent the next hour finishing her work and organizing her desk. If this meeting went badly, she wanted to be able to leave without arousing suspicion. She told Janet she might need to leave early for a doctor's appointment, establishing a reason for her absence in case she didn't come back. At 3:30, she gathered her purse and jacket. "I'll be back in an hour or so," she told Beth. "If anyone needs me, I have my cell phone." The Daily Grind was a small, busy coffee shop that attracted a mix of office workers and students from the nearby community college. Sarah arrived 10 minutes early and chose a table in the back corner where she could see both the front door and the rear exit. She ordered a coffee and waited. At exactly 4 o'clock, a man in naval uniform entered the shop. He was tall, probably in his early 40s, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. He looked around the shop briefly before his eyes settled on her. Even though she was dressed like any other office worker and had changed her appearance significantly over the years, he recognized her immediately. That recognition told Sarah everything she needed to know. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity. Somehow, after 15 years of successful hiding, someone had found Elena Volkov. Captain James Wilson approached Sarah's table with measured steps, his military bearing evident even in the casual setting of the coffee shop. He was younger than she had expected from his voice on the phone, with intelligent gray eyes that seemed to take in every detail of his surroundings. When he reached her table, he extended his hand in greeting. "Miss Martinez, thank you for meeting with me on such short notice." Sarah shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the way his eyes studied her face. She had learned to read people quickly during her years in intelligence, and everything about Captain Wilson suggested he was exactly what he claimed to be. Professional, competent, and very serious about whatever had brought him here. "Please sit down," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "Though I have to say I'm still not sure why the Navy wants to talk to me." Wilson sat down and placed a small leather portfolio on the table between them. He glanced around the coffee shop, taking note of the other customers and the general noise level. Satisfied that they could speak without being overheard, he turned his attention back to Sarah. "Miss Martinez, before we begin, I want to assure you that this conversation is completely voluntary. You're not under investigation, and you're not in any kind of trouble. We're hoping you might be able to help us with information about someone else." Sarah felt a slight sense of relief, though she remained cautious. "I'm not sure how I could help with a naval investigation. I've never had any connection to the military." Wilson opened his portfolio and removed a photograph which he placed on the table facing her. The image showed a man in his mid-40s with dark hair and sharp features. Sarah recognized him immediately, though she was careful not to let any reaction show on her face. "Do you recognize this man?" Wilson asked, watching her carefully. Sarah picked up the photograph and studied it as if seeing the face for the first time. "No, I don't think so." "Should I?" The man in the photograph was Viktor Petrov, one of her former handlers in Russian intelligence. She hadn't seen him in person for over 15 years, but she had occasionally spotted his name in intelligence reports that she had come across during her time in witness protection. He was now a high-ranking official in the SVR, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service. His name is Viktor Petrov, Wilson said. He's a Russian intelligence officer who we believe has been operating in the United States for the past several months. We have reason to think he may be trying to make contact with former assets or people with knowledge of Russian operations. Sarah set the photograph back on the table, her expression carefully neutral. I'm sorry, but I really don't know this person. Why would you think I might? Wilson leaned back in his chair, and Sarah could see him weighing his next words carefully.
Miss Martinez, we know that isn't your real name.
The simple statement hit like a physical blow, but Sarah had trained herself not to react to unexpected revelations. She took a sip of her coffee and met Wilson's gaze steadily.
I'm not sure what you mean. We know that you were born Elena Volkov in Moscow in 1987, Wilson continued, his voice gentle but firm. We know that you worked for the GRU before defecting to the United States in 2010. We know that you were in witness protection for 5 years before you chose to leave the program and disappear. Sarah felt the walls of her carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. Someone had done their homework and done it very thoroughly. But she wasn't ready to abandon her cover story yet. Captain Wilson, I think you have me confused with someone else. My name is Sarah Martinez. I was born in Tucson, Arizona, and I've never been to Russia in my life. Wilson reached into his portfolio again and removed a manila folder. Elena, we have fingerprints, DNA analysis, facial recognition matches, and digital forensics that confirm your identity beyond any doubt. We're not here to expose you or to force you back into witness protection. We need your help. The use of her real name was like a key turning in a lock she had kept sealed for 15 years. Nobody had called her Elena since that last night with David in Portland. Hearing it now brought back a flood of memories and emotions she had worked hard to suppress. What kind of help? She asked, finally abandoning the pretense. Wilson's expression softened slightly, as if he recognized the significance of her admission. Viktor Petrov disappeared from our surveillance 3 weeks ago. Our last intelligence suggested he was planning something called Operation Blackwater. We don't know what it is, but we know it's scheduled to happen within the next 2 weeks. And you think I would know about this because 15 years ago you worked directly under Petrov on cyber warfare operations. Because your defection cost him his position and nearly ended his career. And because we have intercepted communications suggesting that he's specifically looking for you. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. If Victor was looking for her, it wasn't for a reunion. In the world of intelligence, defection was the ultimate betrayal, and Viktor Petrov was not the type of man to forgive or forget. How did you find me, she asked. Facial recognition technology has improved dramatically in the past 5 years. Wilson explained. We've been running periodic searches looking for known foreign agents and assets. Your face was flagged 3 months ago by a traffic camera in downtown Portland. From there, it was a matter of following your trail. 3 months? You've known where I was for 3 months and you're just contacting me now? We weren't planning to contact you at all, Wilson admitted. You've built a good life here and you haven't done anything to warrant government attention. But when Petrov dropped off our radar and we intercepted those communications, we realized we needed your expertise. Sarah leaned forward, her analytical mind engaging with the problem despite her personal fears. What exactly did these communications say? Wilson glanced around the coffee shop again before answering. They referenced finding the architect and mentioned something about completing the circle. Our analysts believe the architect refers to you, given your role in designing the cyber infiltration protocols that Petrov's unit used. The protocols I designed were specifically for intelligence gathering, Elena said, slipping back into her old identity without realizing it. They weren't designed for destructive operations, but they could be modified for that purpose? Elena was quiet for a long moment, thinking through the implications. The protocols she had developed 15 years ago were elegant pieces of code that could infiltrate virtually any computer system without leaving traces. They were designed to collect information and transmit it back to controllers without alerting system administrators. But with the right modifications, they could indeed be used to cause significant damage. Theoretically, yes, she admitted, but it would require someone with intimate knowledge of the original code structure.
Someone like you?
Someone like me. But I'm not the only one who understood those protocols. There were other programmers on the team, all of whom are either dead or have been accounted for, Wilson said grimly, except for you. The weight of this information settled on Elena like a heavy blanket. If Victor was planning some kind of cyber attack using her old protocols, and if he was looking for her specifically, it could only mean one thing. He needed her to help him modify the code for whatever Operation Blackwater was supposed to accomplish. Captain Wilson, I haven't been involved in that world for 15 years. I don't know anything about current Russian operations or capabilities, but you know Viktor Petrov. You know how he thinks, how he operates. You worked with him for 3 years. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, remembering those years in Moscow. Viktor had been brilliant, ruthless, and completely dedicated to his vision of Russian superiority in the digital battlefield. He had also been her mentor, teaching her to think strategically about cyber warfare and to see the broader implications of their work. He was my handler, not my friend, she said finally. We worked together professionally, but I can't say I really knew him personally. But you must have some insight into his methods, his preferences, his likely targets. Alia opened her eyes and looked directly at Wilson. If Victor is planning a major cyber attack using modified versions of my old protocols, he would target something that would cause maximum disruption with minimal risk of immediate retaliation. Something that would demonstrate Russian capability without being so obvious that it couldn't be denied. What kind of target? Financial systems, power grids, transportation networks. Something that would cause chaos but not massive loss of life. Victor was always more interested in demonstrating superiority than causing casualties. Wilson made notes in a small notebook as she spoke. Would he need your direct involvement to modify the protocols? Not necessarily. But having me would make it much easier and much more reliable. The original code was complex, and modifying it without understanding the underlying architecture could cause unpredictable failures. Which is why he's looking for you. Elena nodded slowly. Which is why he's looking for you. And Captain Wilson, if he finds me, he's not going to ask nicely for my cooperation. Wilson closed his notebook and leaned forward. Elena, we can offer you protection. Full protection, new identity, relocation to anywhere in the country you choose. But we need you to help us find Petrov and figure out what Operation Blackwater involves. Elena stared at the photograph of Victor that was still lying on the table between them. 15 years ago, she had walked away from this world because she didn't want to be responsible for the consequences of her work. Now, it seemed, that world had followed her anyway. What exactly are you asking me to do? We want you to help us analyze any intelligence we gather about Petrov's activities. We want you to review communications intercepts and help us understand what he might be planning. And if necessary, we want you to help us predict his next moves.
You want me to hunt my former handler? We want you to help us prevent whatever he's planning before it happens.
Elena was quiet for several minutes, weighing her options. She could refuse to cooperate and hope that Victor never found her. She could agree to help and trust that the government would protect her afterward. Or she could disappear again, starting over in another city with another identity. But there was a fourth option that Wilson hadn't mentioned, one that was both more dangerous and more appealing. She could take an active role in stopping Victor herself. Captain Wilson, if I agree to help you, I want guarantees. I want legal immunity for anything I might have done in the past. I want protection for my colleagues at the law firm so they don't become targets. And I want the right to withdraw my cooperation at any time. I can arrange the immunity and protection, Wilson said. But Elena, once we start this process, it's going to be very difficult to just walk away. Petrov won't stop looking for you just because you decide you don't want to be involved. Elena picked up the photograph of Victor again, studying the face that had haunted her dreams for years. Captain, Viktor Petrov has been looking for me for 15 years. The only difference now is that I know he's close. And for the first time since I left Russia, I have the chance to stop him permanently. Wilson raised an eyebrow. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that instead of waiting for him to find me, we find him first. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of Wilson's cell phone buzzing. He glanced at the screen and his expression changed immediately. We need to continue this conversation somewhere more secure, he said, standing up quickly. That was my office. We've intercepted communications indicating that Petrov knows your current location. Elena felt her blood run cold. How is that possible? We're not sure, but we need to get you somewhere safe while we figure it out. As they left the coffee shop together, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking back into a world she had spent 15 years trying to escape. But maybe, she thought, the only way to truly escape was to face it head-on. Behind them, neither Elena nor Wilson noticed the man in a gray suit who had been sitting in the corner of the coffee shop, apparently reading a newspaper. As they walked away, he folded his paper carefully and made a brief phone call in fluent Russian. The secure facility was nothing like Elena had expected. Instead of a sterile government building, Captain Wilson had brought her to what appeared to be an ordinary office complex in an industrial park outside the city. Only when they passed through multiple security checkpoints and descended 2 levels underground did the true nature of the place become apparent. The briefing room was equipped with wall-mounted monitors, secure communication equipment, and workstations that looked like they belonged in a high-tech corporation rather than a military facility. Elena recognized some of the hardware from her time in Russian intelligence, though the American versions were clearly several generations more advanced. "This is a joint task force facility," Wilson explained as they entered the main operations room. "Navy, FBI, CIA, NSA. When we have situations that cross multiple jurisdictions, this is where we coordinate." Elena was introduced to the other members of the team. Agent Sarah Collins from the FBI, a woman in her 30s with short red hair and the intense focus of someone who had seen too much. Michael Chen from the NSA, a cybersecurity expert who reminded Elena painfully of David, the American engineer she had loved and left behind. And Commander Patricia Hayes from the Navy's Cyber Warfare Division, a sharp-eyed woman who clearly knew more about Elena's background than she was letting on. "Elena," Wilson said, using her real name naturally now, "we need to bring you up to speed on what we know about Petrov's activities over the past 6 months. The main wall monitor came to life, displaying a timeline of events and locations. Elena studied the information carefully, her analytical mind automatically looking for patterns and connections. He entered the country through Montreal 6 months ago," Agent Collins explained. "Customs records show him traveling under a Canadian passport with the name Michel Dubois. From there, he drove to New York and spent 3 weeks in the city before disappearing from our surveillance." "What was he doing in New York?" Elena asked. "We think he was making contact with existing assets," Dr. Chen said, pulling up a series of photographs on the screen. "We have surveillance footage of him meeting with at least 3 individuals who we know are connected to Russian intelligence operations." Elena studied the faces on the screen. 2 of them she didn't recognize, but the third made her draw in a sharp breath. Was Alexei Kozlov, another programmer from her old unit. She had heard he had been killed in a training accident 7 years ago. "Alexei is alive," she said, pointing to his photograph. "We were told he died in 2018. Apparently that death was staged," Commander Hayes said. "We've been tracking his activities for the past 2 years. He's been living in Toronto under the identity of a software consultant." Elena felt a chill of understanding. "If Victor has Alexei, then he doesn't need me to modify the protocols. Alexei understood the code architecture almost as well as I did." "Then why is he looking for you?" Wilson asked. Elena was quiet for a moment, thinking through the implications. "Because I'm the only one who knows the kill switches." The room fell silent. Dr. Chen leaned forward in his chair. "Kill switches? I built safeguards into the original protocols," Elena explained. "Hidden subroutines that could shut down the entire operation if activated. I was paranoid about the code being used for purposes I hadn't approved. Victor knew about some of the safeguards, but not all of them." "So if he's planning a major operation using modified versions of your protocols," Agent Collins said slowly, "he needs you to disable the kill switches, or he needs me to tell him where they are so he can work around them." Elena stood up and walked to the wall monitor, studying the timeline more carefully. "Show me the communications intercepts you mentioned." Dr. Chen pulled up a series of text messages and email fragments on the screen. Most were in Russian, but some were in a coded format that Elena recognized immediately. "This isn't just random communication," she said, pointing to one of the coded messages. "This is operational planning. They're coordinating multiple teams for a simultaneous attack." "Can you decode it?" Wilson asked. Elena studied the text more carefully. The code was based on a system she had helped develop 15 years ago, but it had been modified in ways that suggested years of evolution and refinement. "I can decode some of it, but not all. The basic structure is familiar, but they've added layers of encryption that I don't recognize." She turned to Dr. Katzal. "Chen, do you have the computational resources to run a brute force attack on the unknown elements?" "How long would that take?" Commander Hayes asked. "With the right equipment? Maybe 6 to 8 hours for a full decode." Wilson checked his watch. "Do it. We need to know what they're planning and when, as Dr. Melmelin has debated. This is the book, it's about history. Do it. We need to know what they're planning and when, as Dr. Melmelin has debated. Die. We need to know what they're planning and when, as Dr. Melmelin has debated.
Chen began setting up the decryption analysis. Agent Collins pulled Elena aside. There's something else we need to discuss.
We know that Petrov has at least 2 operatives in this city right now. We think they've been watching you for several days.
Elena felt her stomach drop. Watching me how?
Surveillance cameras near your apartment. Someone following you to work. Monitoring of your electronic communications.
They know your daily routine, your work schedule, probably even what you had for breakfast this morning. Why haven't they made contact? That's what worries us, Collins admitted. If they just wanted to grab you, they would have done it already. The fact that they're still watching suggests they're waiting for something. Elena walked back to the main display, studying the timeline again. What if they're not waiting for something? What if they're waiting for someone? Wilson looked up from a classified report he had been reading. What do you mean? Victor is methodical. He doesn't like to take unnecessary risks. If he's planning something major, he wants to be absolutely certain it will work. Elena pointed to the dates on the timeline. Look at the pattern. He arrives 6 months ago, spends time rebuilding his network and gathering resources. Then 3 months ago, he starts active surveillance on me, but he doesn't make contact. Because he's not ready yet, Commander Hayes said, understanding dawning in her voice. Exactly. He's waiting until the last possible moment to bring me in. That minimizes the risk that I'll escape or that you'll find him through me. Doctor. Chen looked up from his computer terminal. If that's true, then the timing of Operation Blackwater is probably imminent. How imminent? Wilson asked. Elena studied the coded messages again, looking for temporal references. Based on the communication patterns and the fact that they're maintaining surveillance instead of making contact, I'd say we have maybe 48 to 72 hours.
Before what?
Before Victor decides he can't wait any longer and comes for me directly. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Agent Collins was the first to speak.
We need to move you to a more secure location immediately. No, Elena said firmly. If we change my routine now, they'll know something is wrong. And if Victor decides to accelerate his timeline, we might never get another chance to stop him. You're suggesting we use you as bait, Wilson said. I'm suggesting we use me as an asset. I know Victor better than anyone else in this room. I know how he thinks, how he plans, what his weaknesses are, but only if I can get close to him. Commander Hayes shook her head. Absolutely not. We're not sending a civilian into a hostile contact situation.
I'm not a civilian, Elena said quietly. I'm a former GRU operative, with 15 years of experience staying alive in hostile situations. And I'm the only person here who has a chance of getting Victor to reveal his operational plans. Wilson was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks and benefits.
What exactly are you proposing? Elena walked to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. We let them make contact, but we control the circumstances. We choose the time, the place, and the conditions. We make Victor think he's running the operation while we gather intelligence about his real plans. She began drawing a diagram on the whiteboard. Victor will want to meet somewhere he feels secure, probably somewhere with multiple exit routes and good sightlines. He'll bring backup, but not too many people because he doesn't want to attract attention. And you think you can get him to reveal Operation Blackwater? Dr. Chen asked. Victor has an ego. He's proud of his work, and he wants recognition for his brilliance. If I can convince him that I'm willing to cooperate, he'll want to show me what he's accomplished, especially if he thinks I'll be impressed by how he's improved on my original designs. Agent Collins was studying Elena's diagram. This is incredibly dangerous. If something goes wrong, you could end up dead or disappeared. If we don't stop Operation Blackwater, a lot more people could end up dead, Elena replied. Besides, I've been running from Victor for 15 years. I'm tired of running. Wilson made his decision. We'll consider it. But first, let's see what the decryption analysis reveals. Dr. 2. Chen, how much longer? Chen checked his computer screen. The primary analysis should be complete within the hour. But I'm already seeing some interesting patterns in the data. What kind of patterns? Temporal markers that suggest synchronized timing across multiple locations, geographic references that appear to be targeting major infrastructure nodes, and most concerning, what looks like countdown sequences. Elena felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach. Victor isn't just planning a cyber attack. He's planning something much bigger. Before anyone could respond, an alarm began sounding throughout the facility. Commander Hayes immediately moved to her secure communication terminal. Report, she said into her headset. Elena watched Hayes' expression change from concern to alarm. When she finished the communication, she turned to face the group. We just lost contact with our surveillance team watching Elena's apartment building. Last transmission was 23 minutes ago. Wilson stood up immediately.
Could be equipment failure. Could be, Hayes agreed. But there's more.
Traffic cameras in a 6-block radius around the building have been experiencing intermittent failures for the past hour. The pattern suggests deliberate interference.
Elena felt her heart racing. They're not waiting anymore.
Victor has decided to move now. Agent Collins was already reaching for her service weapon. We need to assume that Petrov knows we've made contact with Elena.
The question is, does he know where she is now? As if in answer to her question, Dr. Chen's computer terminal chimed with an incoming priority message.
He read the screen quickly and then looked up at the group. We just received an encrypted communication addressed specifically to Elena Volkov. The sender identifies himself as Viktor Petrov. Elena walked over to Chen's terminal and read the message herself.
It was brief and written in Russian, but the meaning was perfectly clear. What does it say? Wilson asked. Elena translated without looking away from the screen. It says, Elena, we need to finish what we started 15 years ago. You have 24 hours to contact me or I will contact you. The choice is yours, but the outcome is inevitable. She turned to face Wilson and the others. He's not just looking for me anymore. He knows exactly where I am, and he's giving me an ultimatum.
Then we need to get you out of here immediately, Wilson said.
No, Elena replied.
We need to respond to him. It's time to stop running and start hunting. Elena stared at Victor's message on the screen, her mind already working through the tactical implications.
After 15 years of running, she was finally going to face her past directly.
But this time she wouldn't be alone and defenseless. We need to respond within the next few hours, she told Wilson.
Victor will interpret any delay as weakness or an attempt to set up a trap. Isn't that exactly what we're doing? Agent Collins asked. Yes, but we need to make him think he's the one setting the trap. Elena turned to Dr.
Chen. Can we trace the origin of his message? Chen was already working on his computer.
The message was routed through at least 7 different servers across 4 countries. Very sophisticated digital laundering.
But there are patterns in the routing that suggest he's operating from somewhere within a 50-mile radius of this location. Commander Hayes pulled up a tactical map of the metropolitan area. That's still a lot of territory to cover. We need to narrow it down. Elena studied the map, thinking about Victor's operational preferences. He'll want somewhere with good communications infrastructure, multiple escape routes, and the ability to observe without being observed. Probably not downtown because of police presence and traffic cameras, somewhere on the outskirts but not so remote that it attracts attention. She pointed to several locations on the map. Industrial parks, tech corridors, maybe an office complex with flexible leasing arrangements. Somewhere he could rent space without too much scrutiny. Wilson coordinated with the local field offices to begin surveilling the potential locations, but Elena knew they were working against the clock. Victor wouldn't stay in one place for long, especially now that he had made direct contact.
Dr. Chen, what's the status on the decryption analysis, she asked.
Just finished the primary decode. Chen pulled up the results on the main screen. Elena, this is much worse than we thought. The decoded messages revealed a coordinated operation targeting 3 major cities simultaneously. Power grids, financial networks, transportation systems, and communication infrastructure would all be hit within a narrow time window. The goal wasn't just disruption, but complete systemic collapse. The timing is synchronized for maximum impact, Chen explained. They hit the power grid first to disable backup systems, then financial networks to prevent emergency fund transfers, then transportation to stop physical response, and finally communications to prevent coordination of recovery efforts.
Elena felt sick as she read through the technical details. This isn't just terrorism. This is an act of war disguised as cybercrime.
The death toll could be enormous, Commander Hayes said grimly. Hospitals without power, emergency services unable to communicate, people trapped in elevators and subways. Wilson was already on his secure phone, briefing his superiors on the situation. When he finished, he turned back to the group. We have authorization for any measures necessary to stop this operation. Elena, we need you to make contact with Petrov immediately. Elena sat down at Chen's computer terminal and began composing a response message. She wrote in Russian, using the formal tone that Victor would expect from a former subordinate. Victor, I received your message. I am willing to discuss cooperation, but I need assurances about my safety and future. I propose we meet tomorrow evening at the Riverside Industrial Park, Building C, Suite 200.
Come alone and I will come alone. She paused before sending the message. The location is perfect for what we need.
Multiple entrances and exits, good sightlines for surveillance, and isolated enough that we can control access. You're not actually going alone, Wilson said firmly. Victor will have the building under surveillance before I arrive.
If he sees any obvious backup, he'll abort and we'll lose our chance. Agent Collins was studying the building schematics on her tablet. We can position teams in adjacent buildings and use electronic surveillance. But Elena, if something goes wrong, it will take us several minutes to reach you. Then we need to make sure nothing goes wrong. Elena sent the message and then turned to face the group. Victor is brilliant, but he has weaknesses. He's arrogant, he needs to be in control, and he wants recognition for his work. She walked to the whiteboard and began outlining her plan. I'm going to convince him that I want to rejoin the operation. I'll tell him that 15 years of hiding have made me realize that I was wrong to defect. I'll appeal to his ego by asking him to show me how he's improved my original work. And if he doesn't believe you, Wilson asked, then I'll convince him that I'm more valuable as a willing participant than as a hostage. Victor is practical above all else. If he thinks I can help him improve the success rate of Operation Blackwater, he'll want my cooperation. Dr. Chen looked up from his computer. Elena, there's something else. The decoded messages reference something called package delivery, scheduled for 18 hours after the initial attacks. We don't know what it means. Elena felt a new chill of fear. Package delivery was a code phrase we used for nuclear or biological weapons deployment. If Victor is planning a follow-up attack with weapons of mass destruction, the room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just a cyber attack. It was the opening phase of something much more devastating. We need to find Victor now, Wilson said. Elena, we're accelerating the timeline. Can you be ready to make contact tonight instead of tomorrow? Elena nodded. Send him another message. Tell him I'm eager to begin and that waiting until tomorrow feels too risky. Suggest that we meet tonight at 10 o'clock. As Chen sent the revised message, Elena began preparing for what could be the most dangerous conversation of her life. She reviewed everything she knew about Victor's psychology, his operational methods, his personal history. She would need to convince one of Russia's most experienced intelligence officers that she had genuinely changed sides, while simultaneously gathering information that could prevent a national catastrophe. Victor's response came back within 20 minutes. He agreed to the earlier meeting time but changed the location to an abandoned warehouse in a different industrial park.
Elena studied the new location on the tactical map.
He's being cautious, she observed.
This location is more isolated, fewer potential surveillance positions for us, but also fewer escape routes for him.
It suggests he's confident in his ability to control the situation. Or he's planning something we haven't anticipated, Collins said. Elena spent the next few hours preparing for the meeting. She memorized the building layout, studied recent satellite images of the area, and rehearsed various conversation scenarios with Wilson acting as Victor. Remember, Wilson said during their final briefing, your primary objective is intelligence gathering. We need to know the exact timing of the attacks, the specific targets, and any information about this package delivery operation. What about trying to stop him directly? Elena asked. Only if you're absolutely certain you can do it safely. Petrov is too valuable alive if we can capture him and get him to reveal his network. At 9:30, Elena left the secure facility in an unmarked car. She was wearing a small transmitter that would allow the team to monitor her conversation, and she had a GPS tracking device sewn into her jacket. But once she walked into that warehouse, she would be essentially on her own. The warehouse district was dark and nearly deserted. Elena parked her car a block away from the designated building and walked the rest of the way. She could feel eyes watching her from the shadows, but she forced herself to walk calmly and naturally. The warehouse was a large 3-story building that had obviously been vacant for years. The loading dock doors were chained shut, but there was a smaller entrance on the side of the building. Elena tested the door and found it unlocked. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit by a few emergency lights. Crates and machinery from some long-defunct business were scattered around the main floor. Elena walked toward the center of the space, her footsteps echoing in the empty building. Hello, Elena. She turned toward the voice and saw Victor Petrov step out from behind a stack of wooden crates. He looked older than in the surveillance photographs, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes, but his posture and bearing were exactly as she remembered. Hello, Victor. He studied her carefully as he approached. 15 years. You look well. Thank you. You look older. Victor smiled. The same cold smile she remembered from their time in Moscow. The years have been difficult. Your defection cost me dearly. I'm sorry about that. It wasn't personal. Of course it was personal, Victor replied. Everything in our business is personal, but I'm willing to forgive the past if you're willing to help me with the future. Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment when everything would either work or fall apart completely. Victor,
I've spent 15 years running from my past. I'm tired of being afraid.
I'm tired of pretending to be someone I'm not. If you're offering me a chance to be useful again, I'm interested.
Victor circled her slowly, like a predator evaluating prey. And what makes you think I trust you enough to let you be useful? Because you need me, Elena said confidently. If you just wanted me dead, you would have killed me already. If you just wanted revenge, you would have taken it. You're here because you need my help with something. Operation Blackwater. Victor said simply. I don't know what that is, but you know what the protocols you designed 15 years ago could accomplish if they were properly modified. Elena nodded slowly. I've wondered about that over the years, whether anyone would figure out how to weaponize them. Victor's smile widened. Would you like to see? He pulled out a tablet computer and showed Elena a series of code displays. She recognized the basic structure of her original protocols, but they had been modified in ways that made her blood run cold. The elegant infiltration software she had designed for intelligence gathering had been transformed into a digital weapon capable of causing massive destruction. Impressive, she said, hoping her voice sounded steadier than she felt. How many targets? 3 major cities, multiple systems in each location. We estimate complete infrastructure collapse within 6 hours of initiation. Elena forced herself to look impressed rather than horrified.
And the timing?
Victor checked his watch. Phase 1 begins in 16 hours.
Phase 2 follows 18 hours later. What's Phase 2? Victor closed the tablet and looked directly into Elena's eyes. That depends on whether you're truly interested in helping, or whether you're trying to gather intelligence for your new American friends. Elena felt the weight of Victor's suspicious stare, but she had been preparing for this moment for 15 years. Every conversation, every interaction, every carefully constructed lie had led to this point where her ability to deceive could mean the difference between thousands of lives saved or lost. American friends, she said with just the right amount of confusion and hurt.
Victor, I've been hiding from the Americans for 10 years. They want me back in witness protection, under their control, living like a prisoner for the rest of my life. She took a step closer to him, letting her voice take on the tone of someone who had been carrying a burden for too long. Do you have any idea what it's like to spend 15 years pretending to be someone you're not?
Working in meaningless jobs, having no real relationships, always looking over your shoulder.
Victor's expression softened slightly, but Elena could see he was still evaluating her every word and gesture. Then why did you defect in the first place? This was the crucial moment.
Elena had rehearsed this answer, but she needed to make it sound spontaneous and emotional. Because I was young and stupid and in love with an American engineer.
I thought I could have both worlds, that I could live happily ever after like in some ridiculous Hollywood movie. She turned away from Victor, as if the memory was painful.
David Chen turned out to be exactly what you warned me he would be. He used me for information, and then turned me over to the CIA when I was no longer useful to him. Victor's eyebrows raised slightly. Elena knew she was taking a risk by mentioning David's real name, but it was a calculated gamble. Victor would know the name from the intelligence files, and the fact that she was willing to mention it would suggest she was being honest about her bitterness. So, the great romance was a lie, Victor said with satisfaction. The great romance was a trap, just like you said it would be. I was too proud to admit you were right, and too afraid to come home and face the consequences of my defection.
Elena turned back to Victor, letting him see what she hoped looked like genuine regret and determination. But I'm not young anymore, and I'm not stupid anymore.
If you're offering me a chance to be part of something important again, I want to hear about it. Victor studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. But first you need to prove your commitment. He pulled out his tablet again and showed Elena a different screen. This one displayed what looked like a real-time monitoring system showing various infrastructure targets across 3 cities. The kill switches you built into the original protocols, Victor said. I need you to disable them. Elena's heart rate spiked, but she forced herself to look at the screen calmly. I can do that, but I'll need access to the core command structure. These monitoring displays don't show the underlying architecture. Of course they don't, but before I give you access to anything important, I need proof that you're genuinely committed to this operation. Victor gestured toward a laptop computer that was sitting on a nearby crate.
The law firm where you've been working, Henderson and Associates.
They represent several government contractors who work on cybersecurity projects. Elena felt a chill of understanding.
You want me to infiltrate their systems. I want you to demonstrate that you're willing to take actions that would make it impossible for you to return to your current life. Consider it a test of loyalty.
Elena walked over to the laptop and opened it. The screen showed a sophisticated hacking interface that would allow her to infiltrate virtually any computer system. If she used it to attack her own law firm, she would be committing a federal crime that would destroy any chance of returning to her normal life. What exactly do you want me to do? Access their client files and download information about their government contracts. Specifically, anything related to Project Digital Shield. Elena had never heard of Project Digital Shield, but she recognized the type of intelligence Victor was seeking. If the law firm had access to classified information about American cyber defense systems, that intelligence would be invaluable for planning attacks like Operation Blackwater. She sat down at the laptop and began typing, her fingers moving automatically through the infiltration protocols. But instead of actually accessing the law firm's systems, she was using a technique David Chen had taught her years ago, creating the appearance of hacking while actually connecting to a harmless test server.
This is going to take a few minutes, she said, buying time while she tried to figure out her next move. Their security is better than I expected. Victor moved closer to watch her work, but Elena could tell he was also watching her facial expressions and body language for signs of deception. She forced herself to look focused and determined while her mind raced through possibilities. Through her earpiece, she could hear Wilson's voice providing updates on the tactical situation outside the warehouse.
The FBI teams were in position, but they couldn't move without risking Elena's life and losing their chance to gather intelligence about Operation Blackwater. There, Elena said, pointing to the laptop screen.
I'm in their system. She had actually connected to a replica server that Dr. Chen had set up as part of their preparation for this meeting.
It contained fake files that would look like legitimate law firm documents to casual observation. Victor leaned over her shoulder to look at the screen. Excellent. Now download everything related to Project Digital Shield. Elena began transferring the fake files, but she was also looking for an opportunity to gather real intelligence about Victor's operation. The tablet he had shown her earlier was sitting within reach on the crate next to the laptop.
Victor, while this is downloading, can you show me more of the operational timeline? I want to understand how my original protocols fit into the larger attack sequence.
Victor picked up the tablet and opened a different display. This one showed a detailed countdown timer and a list of target locations, with specific attack vectors assigned to each one.
Elena memorized as much as she could while continuing to appear focused on the laptop. She could see that the attacks were scheduled to begin in just over 15 hours, and that they would affect not just infrastructure but also military installations and government communications networks.
Phase 2, she said casually. You mentioned there was a Phase 2 operation. Victor glanced at her and then back at the tablet.
Package delivery.
Once the infrastructure is down and emergency response is paralyzed, we deploy special assets to strategic locations. What kind of special assets? The kind that will ensure the damage is permanent rather than just temporary. Elena felt her blood run cold.
Victor was talking about weapons of mass destruction deployed after the cyber attacks had disabled the ability to respond effectively. This wasn't just terrorism, it was a plan to cripple the United States for years or decades.
How many package delivery sites? She asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. 6 major population centers. Enough to demonstrate that America is no longer invulnerable. Places created and the people faced it together. Elena's mind was racing. She had the intelligence Wilson needed. But she also realized that she was running out of time.
Victor would expect her to complete the fake download soon, and then he would want to move to the next phase of testing her loyalty. Victor, she said, making a decision that would either save the operation or end her life, there's something I need to tell you about the kill switches. Victor looked up from his tablet with sharp interest.
What about them? I didn't just build them into the protocols. I built them into myself. Victor's expression changed immediately to suspicion and anger. What do you mean? I mean that the kill switches aren't just code subroutines that can be disabled remotely. They're biometric locks that require my physical presence and cooperation to override.
If anything happens to me, the protocols will automatically shut down after 12 hours. It was a complete lie, but Elena was betting that Victor's paranoia and his incomplete understanding of her original code architecture would make it believable.
Victor's hand moved toward the weapon Elena was certain he had concealed under his jacket. You're lying. Am I? Then go ahead and try to run Operation Blackwater without me. See how long your modified protocols function when they encounter the biometric verification sequences I embedded in the core architecture. Victor stared at her for a long moment, his mind clearly working through the possibilities. Elena could see him weighing the risks of believing her against the risks of not believing her. Prove it, he said finally. Elena stood up from the laptop and walked closer to Victor's tablet. Show me the core command interface and I'll demonstrate the biometric locks. Victor hesitated, then opened a different screen on his tablet. Elena recognized the command structure immediately. It was indeed based on her original protocols, but the modifications were more extensive than she had realized. "Here," she said, pointing to a section of code. "This looks like my verification subroutine, but you've modified it. The problem is that without the proper biometric confirmation, this modification will cause a cascade failure in approximately 10 hours. She was making up technical details as she went, but she delivered the information with the confidence of someone who genuinely understood the system. Victor studied the code she was pointing to. Elena could see doubt creeping into his expression. "If that's true," he said slowly, "then I need to keep you alive and cooperative until after Operation Blackwater is complete." "That's right. And Victor, I want it to be complete. I want to be part of something that matters again." Victor made his decision.
Very well.
"You'll come with me to the Operational Command Center. You can monitor the biometric systems during the attack and ensure there are no failures."
Elena nodded, though her heart was pounding. "Where is the command center?"
40 minutes from here. We leave immediately." As Victor began packing up his equipment, Elena's mind was working frantically. She had succeeded in convincing him that she was essential to his operation, but now she was going to be taken to a location where the FBI surveillance teams couldn't follow. She would be completely on her own, surrounded by hostile operatives trying to prevent a catastrophic attack from the inside. Victor gestured toward the warehouse exit. "After you, Elena. It's time to finish what we started 15 years ago." Elena walked toward the door, knowing that Wilson and his team were listening to every word through her transmitter. She could only hope that the intelligence she had gathered would be enough for them to prevent the attacks, because she might not get another chance to communicate with them. As they left the warehouse, Elena caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows of the adjacent building. The FBI teams were following at a distance, but she knew that once Victor reached his command center, she would be beyond their reach. Victor led her to a black sedan parked behind the warehouse. As they got into the car, Elena made one last attempt to gather intelligence. "Victor, the package delivery sites, are they all in the same cities as the cyber attacks?" Victor started the car and smiled his cold smile. "Elena, you always were too curious for your own good. You'll learn everything you need to know when we reach the command center." As they drove into the night, Elena realized that everything now depended on her ability to sabotage Operation Blackwater from within Victor's own organization. She had 15 hours to prevent a national catastrophe, and she was going to have to do it alone.